A very warm welcome to all of you, wherever you might be watching from around the world. Welcome to KDRTV. It is 10:20 here in Central America, Central Standard Time. It is 11:20 Eastern Standard Time, and it is 6:20 p.m. in East Africa. Very delighted to have you on the show today, and we're going to continue having a good conversation we had for quite a number of months right now that is generating a lot of interest among us, many, not just the diasporans, but people around the world. So we are honored today to start another interesting conversation that we promised a week ago, and that is to talk about Black and immigrant women in leadership and workplace in the United States. It's a very interesting subject, quite frankly, sometimes that evoke emotions amongst the many people. But we have brought two extremely brilliant women who are going to engage in a very candid conversation around issues that affect women, not just African immigrant women in the United States, but also African Americans who are natives of this country. So during the course of the conversation, we encourage you to go to our Facebook Live, make comments and questions if you so choose. Also, go on YouTube, where we're streaming live, and Twitter, and make your comments. We'll be happy to play some of the comments and questions at the end of the show. And then shortly after this discussion about Black and immigrant women experiences in leadership, we're going to move to East Africa, where we're going to dissect the legal system in Kenya. We have Dolphina Alego, who is also vying for a seat in the judicial system of Kenya. She'll be on at 11:20 Central Time, which will be 7:20 East African time. So right now, I'm going to bring the two wonderful women who are going to engage in this conversation. To my left, I want to start. Hey ladies, how are you? You look fantastic. I'll tell you that for sure.
Thank you.
Then, and I want to, before I do that, I have to introduce you to the viewers. You have very beautiful and excellent resumes. It's way too long, but I'm going to just go quickly, begin with Courtney, who is joining us from Indiana. Courtney Lloyd, she's an educator, she's a professor, just like me, a consultant and a researcher dedicated to creating anti-racist spaces where people of color thrive. And that's really very relevant to the discussion we are having here today. She holds a master's in education policy and management from Harvard Graduate School of Education and is currently a diversity fellow and doctoral candidate at Boston College studying applied developmental and educational psychology. Harvard. That really makes me a bit nervous, but glad to have you, Courtney. Currently, she also teaches undergraduate and graduate psychology courses and conducts research on education and career development of Black and Latino people across lifespans and anti-racist philosophy, so philanthropy. That would be really interesting perspective we're going to have. And then to my right, depending on where you are, we bring on Latifa Chiripeda. Latifa, you pronounce that, I say that Chiripenda, but you let us know in a moment what that is. Latifa, joining us with a beautiful smile there. She's a senior manager, consumer operations at Colourpast and a co-founder of Uganda Empowerment, Women Empowerment in Minnesota. Latifa is a native of Uganda. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Public Health and from St. Catherine University and an MBA in Business Analytics from the University of St. Thomas here in St. Paul. At the moment, she's also a co-founder, as we said earlier on, of the Uganda Women Empowerment in Minnesota, which aims at connecting and empowering women through career building, community networking, leadership, mentorship, business, and life skills. That's really important for us. She also serves as a volunteer on the Committee for Muslim Space, a community organization that fosters an open, inclusive, pluralistic, multicultural space for self-identified Muslims and the broader community. So really very interesting perspective, very interesting backgrounds, which I think is going to be very fruitful in this discussion. So I want to start with you, Courtney. Did I introduce you well? Introduce yourself quickly to the viewers. I want to hear your voice.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremiah. Really delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me. So currently I am engaged in research that looks at Black and Latinx people's experiences from youth into their adulthood as they have been pursuing their interests in sciences and science careers. And then also looking at why Black and Latinx people leave a trajectory towards science, because we know that historically and also ongoing, there is racism, sexism, and marginalization of these groups within the science fields in the U.S. And so really wanting to have research that looks at the overall lay of the land across education and workplaces in order to inform practices and policies that support Black and Latinx people's success and retention within these spaces.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That's going to be really interesting. And then we bring on Latifa.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Okari, and thanks for inviting me. I am originally from Uganda, I think, to start with. My leadership experience spans diverse industries globally, including leading projects and programs in international development, experience of leadership in the nonprofit sector, medical device corporate leadership, and leadership roles in social impact organizations. In my current role at Coloplast, I am part of the leadership team for the whole company for the United States, which leads approximately 100 employees. I lead a team of 10, specifically in the Consumer Operations Department, and oversee our consumer operational strategy and data performance reporting. So I can tell you that as an immigrant and first African to hold such a role, I've definitely come to some key learnings that I hope I can be able to share today. And then, of course, with my work with the Uganda Women Empowerment in Minnesota, again, our mission is to connect and empower each other as immigrants, right, far away in the diaspora. We share resources, social and economic opportunities with one another. Briefly, I also just want to mention, because I think this is relevant for some viewers that are here in the US, I came to the United States as an international student. And during my time at St. Kate's, I campaigned and got elected as the Student Senate President, who was the first international student and the first African to hold that position. For those listening from Uganda or Kenya, that's the equivalent of a University Guild president. Two other things here that I want to highlight that I think is in the context of the conversation we want to have today. After my bachelor's degree here in the US, I got a job offer with the Minnesota Department of Human Services. I also got another job offer to return home to Uganda and work with the United States Agency for International Development. I chose to return home because I was passionate. I wanted to make a difference. So I returned to Uganda and worked as a program manager. I was actually promoted within 3 months of arriving home. And in that role, I was also the only woman on the management team and the youngest. I think those are really important. I've kind of, I guess the summary of who I am here is that I've found myself where I'm always almost the minority, both in terms of either race, gender, or age in the spaces that I have sought to occupy.
Okay, very good. So thank you. Excellent intro there. Excellent, both of you. I think based on those introductions, it really gives us a good base from which we have to work. I mean, there are many other issues that that revolve around women of color, especially, and we cannot really exploit all of them today. But we're going to focus on a few issues here. Courtney is a native of the United States, so probably she might not have that immigrant perspective. And you, Latifa, you have the immigrant perspective. But we do also know that women across the country, particularly the minorities, do go through a lot of challenges. And maybe this conversation will be a start to what could be more productive within those two communities. If you could, and by the way, congratulations, you ladies have worked very hard. You've achieved what you've achieved, and I'm sure the future is much brighter than it is right now. To begin with you, Courtney, what are some of the challenges that you think most Black women face in the workplace, and particularly in the endeavor to grow?
Yeah, I think, two words come to mind, right? Racism and sexism. And so a couple of ways that plays out as challenges are that, so we can think about in the Black community, African American community, there is a phrase that a lot of us grew up learning, which is to you have to work twice as hard to get half as much. And that really speaks to the experiences of myself, so many people I've seen, as well as what the research shows, that Black women are judged more harshly for their missteps, and they're also not given as much credit for their successes. Especially if we compare their circumstances to white men who are in leadership roles. So this means that, for one, Black women are often overlooked for advancement and for leadership opportunities. And then also when they have roles, they're not given as much chances. As we all make mistakes, right? They're not going to be given a second chance as often as other people from who have other identities many times. So that's kind of one overarching issue. The second that's related to the oftentimes unconscious biases, sometimes they're conscious biases, which are, racist, sexist. Those play out in that Black women are sometimes stereotyped. And this particular stereotypes that African American women face are that we're angry and that we're too aggressive, we're difficult to work with. So this means that people sometimes will distort the communication, the actions of Black women in leadership roles. So if you think about, being assertive, being confident, being direct, being a go-getter, those are characteristics that when white men in leadership roles, are doing them, they're seen as oftentimes as great leaders who are able to kind of push a team forward. When Black women in leadership roles are doing that, there's sometimes a perspective of they're being angry, they're overly aggressive, right? They're being viewed through the lens of these stereotypes. So, for example, I experienced this when I was in a role and managing a program for youth development, and I asked for a one-on-one meeting with a colleague who is a man, not a person of color, not a Black person. And the first thing he said when we sat down was, "Are you going to punch me in the face?" And, he said it kind of kidding, but it really showed me such a contrast because it was a predominantly Black organization. And my Black colleagues oftentimes I felt perceived me as too nice or as very mild mannered, right? And so then to see that this was the first thing that my colleague here is saying really showed me, oh, wow, you are bringing this stereotype to me. And now I have some choices to make of how am I going to respond? What does this mean for navigating the rest of my communications with him? So it's just another layer on top of the actual work itself.
So interesting. And that's just the beginning of the many challenges that Black and immigrant women face. Latifa, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I think Courtney made some really great points here. In my context, I guess, as an African woman, I would like to approach this in the context of both the workplace, in the corporate environment, or even other professional spaces that people out there might occupy in the public or private sector. But also I want to touch a little bit on immigrant women because we work closely with them here in Minnesota. Well, first I want to say that I know that research shows that immigrant women are actually much less likely to occupy like managerial or professional occupations compared to US-born women. And the research says that, and I tend to listen to podcasts and so on because I want to progress in my career, so I tend to listen to things that can educate me to get there. But from my experience, I think one of the main challenges is that we lack a diversity in leadership in a lot of the spaces we seek to occupy. And to me, when we don't have Black or immigrant women in these leadership roles that we are seeking, it makes us almost invisible, right? And we lack the support to help us advance to the top. From my experience, I've found that, you have to work extremely hard. So I agree with Courtney. As immigrants, actually, for us, it's like I always had the mantra, we have to work like 10 times harder to really prove our intellect, to prove our capabilities. So we really end up spending a ton of time focused on just our performance in the workplace. But then we also still lack the exposure to the senior leaders who are supposed to see you in order to influence your next promotion or to recognize you and award you the next big assignment or raise or whatever that kind of recognition in the workplace would look like. I think that when you have people who share your lived experience or share an identity like yours and understand your challenges, then it is much easier to seek the blueprint, or maybe we can also call it the formula for success of how those who have made it actually manage to climb the ranks. Okay. So I think that's really important for corporate. The last point I want to make on this one is that for Uganda Women Empowerment in Minnesota, I have actually seen that many immigrant women, when they come to this country, are very highly educated in the countries they are coming from. And when they come here, the system is so hard for them to navigate and take on the same leadership roles that they had in their countries when they get here. So a lot of them end up owning their own businesses or starting their own organizations and initiatives, right? In the Ugandan community, at least I know, and I think there are a lot of others from Kenya or Nigeria and other places, from cooking and catering, braiding our hair, to grocery stores, to fitness and wellness. But what I have observed is that many of these businesses and organizations also lack the skills and coaching they need to grow their businesses and organization. Because in the US, the system can also be a very complicated system, navigating the legal things you're supposed to take care of, the financial system, So I think the skill gap also is a challenge for women taking on leadership in their own businesses and organizations. And there is a missed opportunity there, I think, for women and immigrants in that space.
Okay, so good points, and I think as the two ladies, as you discuss this and you do so eloquently, a lot of men, especially the black men, are watching this, and they are saying, if you are working 10 times harder, then the black man is working 10,000 times harder to even prove the very basic point. But regardless, I appreciate the fact that at least there are challenges, but you two have worked very hard, and there are many women also who have very good stories to tell. But we cannot talk about challenges as well. So given the challenge that we already mentioned there, Courtney, to begin with you again, how do we black and immigrant women deal with those challenges that you mentioned?
Yeah, I think, I want to just offer this idea of intersectionality as a framework for us to think about black women as well as African immigrant women, that there's these, so we can think about in the US, right? There's racism. That's one form of oppression. There's there's sexism, there's class oppression, there's xenophobia. And so black women experience these particular forms of challenges in very specific ways that oftentimes will overlap with the challenges that black men face. But there's also oftentimes some particular differences that emerge in which from kind of thinking about this intersectionality, when we think about, whose stories are getting told in terms of, supporting people who are experiencing discrimination and injustice, oftentimes it's the black women's voices and stories that are not getting told as much. And so, I think there is some misnomers at times about, what black women are experiencing, because we don't hear about the challenges as much as what you would hear about the challenges for black men within the black community, as well as in more of like mainstream media and news stories in the US. So I think one of the things to think about in navigating the challenges is that, of course, organizations need to be the ones changing their practices and policies and culture to make them spaces in which Black women leaders and immigrant women leaders are supported. But as we are pushing for that, we also are in these roles and facing these challenges. So one thing I've learned is the importance of knowing the game of the politics of the situation that you're in, the settings that you're in. So understanding, who are your advocates, and particularly based on your identity as a Black woman, who are my advocates, who are going to be the people throwing me under the bus if I make a mistake, or who are waiting for me to make a mistake. Okay. And then also thinking about the politics of calling things out that when you're facing those comments that are, stereotypes or biases, understanding that there may be consequences for you to call people out on things like that. And so really it's just having that understanding so you know how you want to navigate and make decisions.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Good point. Thank you for giving that positive view. Latifa, yes, it sounds negative, and thank you for those encouraging comments. Courtney, I was looking at the Center of National Educational Statistics, and the findings are very, very interesting. Actually, it shows that 60% of college graduates who have master's degrees in the United States are women. This is not something that used to be in 1965, not too long ago. For doctoral students, including Courtney, 54% of doctoral students really are women, which suggests that over the next decade or so, we're going to have more women graduating with advanced degrees and therefore going into the workplace. And we are saying also the immigrants and the Black women really should be part of the conversation. To you, Latifa, what do you say then? How do you handle those challenges so that the Black and immigrant women play a much bigger role in the social, economic, and political development of the country?
Well, first of all, thank you for those interesting statistics, because I think they further affirm the fact that the issue is not that we are not well educated. I think we are well educated, and those statistics continue to increase for Black and immigrant women from the statistics you just shared. But it's also not an issue that we lack ambition. We have ambition, and we want to occupy those spaces. But to go back on the challenge that I shared about lack of diversity and representation, I will recommend, I think, something that has worked for me, but also is supported by documented research. One of the things that Black and immigrant women need, and I think similar to what Courtney shared, is we need sponsors in the spaces we want to occupy. And sponsors should not be confused with mentors. Both are important, but they are different. A mentor is someone who advises you, right? But a sponsor is someone who advocates for you. And usually that person is in a senior level leadership role in your company or organization. We need these people of influence in our corner advocating for us, so that when it's time for, that leadership role promotion or that project assignment that involves traveling globally or pay raises, those people will know your story and your potential, and they will see you regardless of the color of your skin. And from my experience, I think the reality is that in order to climb the ladder of corporate America, and I think I've learned this the tough way, is that it's not just about your strength, right? I like to work hard, and I would do all these different things in my cubicle and do good work, but it's not enough to just have strength and talents. You also need other people, and by other people, I need other people who are the influential people in the organization to be willing to recognize, support, and develop those strengths that you bring to the table, right? You need other people basically to see you. I just want to share briefly here that in my situation, I didn't have Black or immigrant women around me. I'm the first Black person, first African, of course, to hold this type of role that I hold in a corporate environment. And when I was reflecting a little bit about my journey, I honestly took ownership of my professional development. My boss was white, all the people in the ladder were white people, but I did not shy away from communicating my value. So in every performance review, here is what I did. Most people come to a performance review to be told how they performed. I literally had a document that says, here is what I accomplished this year. Here is the impact it has had on the business. Here is my ambition for next year. And by the way, here is my ask for the projects I want to do. And here are the skills I want to develop. does this align with the strategy of where you want to go, right? That person cannot ignore you, right? When you articulate your goals to others as a Black woman or immigrant woman, you will be connected to other people, especially if you're highly valued and you, as an employee, and you are engaged, right? You're kind of making the way for yourself. You're hitting the concrete and saying, you have to see me. Okay. So I think that's really important.
So what I hear, both of you making very good points. I understand, yes, we can talk about the challenges facing the Black and immigrant women. We can talk about how we handle it. But what I hear from both of you, and by the way, you made good accomplishments, is that we really need to reach out. That's important. Just because there is an element of sectionalism, sexism, and racism, yeah, there is that. It has been there historically. It is now, and it will continue to be here for a while to come. But it is important for the Black and immigrant community women to also reach out to Asians, white, in the workplace for the prime goal of growing. Is that correct understanding, Courtney?
I mean, I definitely am right there with Latifa that, you know, having those support systems who are willing to advocate for you, who are willing to be thought partners, are incredibly important. And especially, yeah, and you know, I have had people who are from diverse backgrounds, right, who have been those players for me. So it's huge, yeah.
And just to point out that Courtney and I worked together over 10 years ago. It's interesting, the 10 years of there are those challenges. Both of us were actually laid off, but that did not deter us. And look at where we are right now. I'm going to get to you, Latifa, one quick point. Unique from Courtney, for first-generation immigrant women, usually the challenges are much higher than the second or third generation. But you are saying sometimes you need to be the pioneer. Sometimes you need to really fight the hard way so that you set an example for the next generation, right, Latifa?
No, absolutely. And I think for me, part of what excited me about this topic, I realized I never talk about myself as a trailblazer. When you reached out to me about this discussion and I was trying to reflect on it, I realized I reflected on my journey. But I think my toolkit is that for every opportunity and ambition I have, I ask, what do they need? What do I have to offer? The fact that I'm Black or Ugandan or African or immigrant always comes after the fact. So I always come from what's the value and what's my story and how does this fit with the ambition I have. So I think that mindset is also actually really important, because from my experience, I think that's what this made me think about. I never think of myself as Black, African, Ugandan first. Those are important identities. But when I need something, I find out what the other place needs and what value I have to offer, and then I work for it.
Okay. Oh, good point. So, yeah, thank you both for that contribution. So, I don't want us to get into politics, but at the same time, we got to take advantage of what's happening on the political scene to make sense of what that is and relative to the Black and immigrant community, specifically the women. So let's talk about Kamala Harris. Courtney, what do you think are the ramifications, or what does that mean for the Black and immigrant women?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a great question. I believe that, you know, there's a lot of support in the Black community for having a Black woman as the VP nominee. I believe that, you know, when we think about historically, Black women, African American women have been the most loyal base of voters for the Democrats. And so, you know, people are ready to have, you know, representation in the White House, right, and in the administration on a higher degree. So there were actually about 150 Black leaders across, you know, kind of at a national level, who wrote a collective letter to Joe Biden before he announced that nomination, really saying, you know, it's time for it's been time for a Black woman. You know, this decision needs to happen where a Black woman is the VP nominee. And of course, right, in order for her to even have gotten to that position, she has to, right, like we said, go above and beyond in what her credentials are and what her qualifications are. So we know that she is more than capable of doing the job. I think it's also important to note that, you know, we're at a particular moment in history, right, where there's a national attention on the ways that the criminal and justice system has perpetuated violence against Black bodies and continues to do so. And her background as a prosecutor does kind of give makes some people skeptical. And I think there's particularly a generational kind of difference where there's a lot more grace, I feel like, in the older generations of the Black community around that, whereas you know, the younger millennials, Generation Z, are there. I think there's more skepticism around her background as a prosecutor, and also thinking about, you know, what the criminal and justice system has meant in the Black community. So yeah, it's an interesting moment in time for her nomination.
Oh, okay. Well, interesting time. And again, I understand talking politics sometimes can be like, again, depending on your political persuasion, that those ones who will be for or not for her. But it clearly does send a very strong message to a Black woman, particularly young children, knowing if they grow up, they can go beyond that. Latifa, you're giving a more immigrant perspective. Your thoughts on Kamala Harris?
Yeah, so I mean that's an interesting question for me, of course. Of course, I think Kamala, as a, you know, the first African American and first Black woman to be selected as a VP running mate is a big deal, right? In the context of this conversation we are having. Again, to go back to my point, I think for me, Kamala is the epitome of representation of diversity in leadership. I strongly believe that it matters who is at the table making decisions that impact our lives, that impact the lives of immigrant and Black women in America. And this is not an issue of who. She could be a Democrat, she could be a Republican. The point I'm trying to make here is that regardless of who you support, the important learning for me here is that when I see women of color who are trailblazers and are creating that blueprint that I talked about, it's really a great opportunity to lay the stage for other women of color to dream big and to follow their footsteps. But I think an interesting point, Dr. Okari, here that is also very clear is that, you know, I think that she amplifies those challenges we are talking about, right? So if people have read in the news around some of the accusations and things that are coming in, right, it amplifies this conversation we are having, you know, around her, you know, being a Black woman and, you know, where she's from or whether she's qualified for the job or not, or whether she was born here or born somewhere else. Those types of things show you exactly what we are talking about, except this is now on a global platform, that our challenges as Black or immigrant women, they are real. But that should not stop us. We can be able to transcend them.
Junior, you can put some of them. Okay. So, interesting perspective there. Again, politics is politics. We've been lucky enough to have one Black person in the White House. That meant a lot. We are potentially going to have another one, potentially, just those words very carefully. Latifa, do you foresee a situation where you see an immigrant woman going that high? Or could that be you? Or could that be you?
I haven't thought that far. I mean, politics, you know, I seek advice, and I can't say never, but right now I would rather that my impact is focused within communities and leading organizations and efforts where outside of politics for right now, I would say. But it would be fun to have more.
Oh, you've done it. You're doing incredible work for the Ugandan Association here in the U.S. and you've been back to Uganda to do great work there. So it will surprise me not if I hear you as the next first president of Uganda. So, as long as you invite Courtney and I to come to your inauguration, that would be great. So let's talk about this topic here. It's very interesting. Sometimes some people might ask, Jeremiah, why do you have Black and immigrant? So there is this conversation among academics sometimes, the difference between black and immigrants. Some people say black Americans. I don't know what the difference is, black Americans to African Americans. And there are those ones who say they're those Africans or the continental Africans, right? So there's also no, the African American problem is not my problem. It's a problem with those ones who were born in America. In fact, one person was telling me the other day, the African Americans are those ones who are the descendants of slaves, right? But anybody who came here through any airport probably is not African American, is a continental African. So here's a question for you two ladies. At the workplace, it really doesn't matter whether you are born in Chicago or Mississippi or in Nigeria or South Africa. Black is black. Going forward, what do you think, or how should we work together, whether you're continental African or African American, how should we work together in such a way that we can really tell our story in the most positive way? Let me begin with you, Courtney.
Yeah, I love that question. I believe that one of the most important things to think about is knowing, one, the history of the U.S., the place that we're in, because I think a lot of times, you know, when you think about media that's exported around the world and the images of Black people in this country that are exported around the world, they're often aligned with those stereotypes that we started talking about, and often are portraying Black people, Black communities as being, as that there's something wrong, right, with folks. So I think it's really important for people to understand actually what Black communities have been through, and the resilience that we are showing every day in this country. And so I think that's a big part of it, and having a shared understanding of each other's histories across the diaspora. And then I think it's also, Jeremiah, like you said, seeing each other as part of each other's communities. I think that, you know, I've had classmates, I've had students who've talked about, who are children of African immigrants, and they've talked about how their parents specifically taught them not to identify with or hang out with, you know, Black folks, and to really separate themselves, being intentional to separate themselves and distinguish themselves from other Black people, Americans in this country. And so I think part of it is really seeing how we have a shared narrative, a shared story, and acknowledging one another, even as just, you know, I see you in the hallway, right? If I've been taught, socialized, if I see another Black person, a Black woman at my school, at an organization, I'm going to give them a little nod. I'm going to say hello. You know, I see you. I see you are here, and that you are somebody who's, you know, I identify with as a Black person. And I think even having those small moments starting off between, you know, African immigrant communities and Black multi-generational, you know, Americans, that is going to be part of the collectivity that we need to foster in order to get our shared stories and shared narratives out.
Okay. So, thank you, Courtney. You know, Lateef, it's interesting. In my classroom, one of the most humbling experiences sometimes is when my students come in, whether they're from Nigeria, whether they're from Tennessee, whatever that, but as long as they see that sound and color that looks like them, it is very encouraging. It's really uplifting for them. Yes, of course, we want to focus on academics, but really it says a lot. Even at the workplaces, you see us grouping in that manner. What do you say to immigrants who might say, you know, that's an African-American problem, but forgetting that actually we are neighbors, forgetting the fact that our children, surely in the next 10, 20 years, our children are going to get intermarried, and through that, those are going to be our grandchildren and their lives. What do you say to them, Lateef, on that note?
Yeah, Dr. Okari, that's a great question, actually. I think for me, when I think about this one, I think that African immigrant and Black American women, we do have, I completely concur with Courtney that we do have that shared narrative. We have commonalities in our shared experience. But actually, I want us to also be able to acknowledge that we also have diversity within our lived experiences. So Latifa, who grew up somewhere, in Uganda, somewhere in a place somewhere in an urban area in Uganda, and Courtney grew up in Indiana, our lived experiences are also diverse and different, and they shape our worldview. And I think the reality is that society today, our personal identities are political. If you identify as a Black person, you actually don't have to identify. If your skin says you are a Black person, or if you are, a woman in society, those labels come subscribed with certain ramifications. So when it comes to Black African immigrant women or Black American women, our burdens are similar when it comes to institutional oppression, right? And for those who need a quick definition, on institutional oppression, I think Courtney talked about this a little bit, but basically I think this is where the systems that we have in place or the institutions that we have in place here in the US are set up with either practices or laws or like custom things that happen that continue to like produce inequities based on someone's membership to an identity group. So Dr. Okari, for me, two things. I think that one, I have to recognize your efforts in creating these types of platforms that bridge this gap for me to be able to come on a talk show and engage with, a brilliant mind like Courtney. You are getting us connected to have these conversations. And I think this should continue because it's important that we connect with one another. The second piece for me to close this out maybe would be that we have a huge opportunity for partnership. So when I talked about the Uganda Women Empowerment in Minnesota, those women have to navigate the American legal system or the financial system. There are so many African American women starting really great businesses, right? And they have Black-owned businesses. We need to learn from them. But then those women also need our business as African immigrant women, right? So we need each other, and I think there is an opportunity for partnership. And as we continue these platforms that bring us together, I think we shall be more powerful together.
One thing I can assure you is that KDRTV is going to be the platform. So that I can guarantee you. As long as you look straight to the camera and promise our viewers that you'll be coming back to engage in this conversation. It's not a one-time invitation. It's a lifelong invitation so that we can engage these conversations. And so just to be fair for the viewers, I know many people are making good comments there and posting questions. If you have any questions, please post those questions on the comment section on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, so that we can have 2-3 questions from, so that the two absolutely brilliant ladies can answer those. So do you have any thoughts or any questions, any thoughts there, Courtney?
Wholeheartedly agree. There needs to be more spaces and platforms created to have these conversations that are bringing together the experiences and voices of Black and African immigrant people. And I think sometimes in, like if I look at research, a lot of times everybody's kind of lumped together, and that diversity that we're talking about is really not discussed as much when we think about these issues in the workplace and in education. And there's a lot of identities that people are bringing and experiences across classes. We can think about colorism, where, the way that supremacy is, that if you have lighter skin, people are often viewing you as closer to white, right? And so, which means with white supremacy, you're seen as superior, and your intelligence and beauty standards, all of these things. So these are the nuances that I think are really important for us to openly talk about and acknowledge about. How can we break this down so that we're all able to have justice?
Courtney, while I have you there, Stella Mugaka from the East Coast is asking, why do African Americans look down upon their own African immigrants? So, depending on how you define African Americans, and I know you don't speak on behalf of the entire community, your thoughts?
So, I don't want to be the representative of the African American community.
Of course not.
But I can speak from my own experience, what I've seen. And, I think for me, it's interesting because, and, I grew up in Indiana in the Midwest region of the country, where there weren't and aren't very many African immigrants or, people from across the diaspora who are here. So in my mind, and what a lot of us, I think that I was around originally thought is that, oh, I see you're Black, you're part of my community. And then I think over time, realizing that, oh, actually, like, they don't African immigrants don't necessarily see themselves as being part of my community. Like, they may or they may not. And so I think for me, there's been an openness of, I'm inviting you to the cookout if you want to be there, if you see yourself as part of the community. But I also recognize that might not be, that might not be something that folks see themselves. But I will say, the people who, may have a negative viewpoint, it goes back to what are the stereotypes and the images of, sorry to say, but largely the continent of Africa is in the U.S. It's a very racist portrayal of Africans that are on the media in this country. So
Latifa, to come to Latifa, Courtney is really trying to make a good point there. But let's be honest, for those of us who grew up in Africa, sometimes the images we saw on TV were very negative. And sometimes I make jokes with my students in class, and I tell them the only movie I had watched before coming to America was Coming to America. And really, when you look at that movie, it doesn't really depict a very good story of a guy coming from Africa. On that same question, Latifa, could the question be reversed the other way around? Your thoughts?
I don't know if the question would be reversed the other way around, but I think there is something to note here. And I'm glad you mentioned movies, because I think my mind went to Chadwick Boseman. I remember when I went to watch Black Panther, and I saw a woman who wore braids just like me. I think it's Letitia Wright, if I remember correctly. And when the movie ended, there was some white man and his family right in front of us. And I said, wow, that normalized wearing braids in the workplace for a Black person in a movie that is selling out at the post office. And I felt really at home seeing a Black woman wearing hair and someone I could see myself as, I guess. And we have that shared experience as African immigrant or Black American women when it comes to the perception of our professionalism in the workplace. So I think to me, so I think that's one example of showing that we have a shared experience, but it goes back to my point earlier. Yes, we are Black, but we also have diversity in our lived experiences. Me growing up in Uganda is very different from someone growing up in Indiana. And until we have a cup of tea or coffee to understand what those are, we also have dialogues we need to have within, and not just across other races, but also within the Black community, whether it's Black Americans or African immigrants, because our experiences are different, although we have some commonalities.
Okay. Good point. And I think we say, sometimes people talk about culture, whether the African immigrant or African American culture. And I always tell people, including my students, you cannot define culture unless you bring in the element of time. So what was defined as a way of life in 1920 or 1930 surely is not the same way. And so that also means that we have an opportunity here to create history where our children and grandchildren will look back to our time and be so proud of what is it that we did for the benefit of the Black and immigrant women in the country. So as we conclude, by the way, Dolphina Alego in Nairobi, Kenya, she's standing by to come on. Let's talk about this. There's always been a conversation about the boy, girl, child, whatever that you want to take it. that for a long time it's been thought that the girl child has always been kind of not been treated very well. But in all truthness, the boy child, especially here in the United States, has really been a very bad situation given what we've seen on our national televisions. What do you say to the young boy or young black girl watching this today? To start off with you, Courtney.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, when I think about black girls and how, again, like, black girls are facing a lot of similar challenges to black boys. The disparities, if we look at, suspension rates, expulsion rates, are black girls compared to white girls are the same as black boys compared to white boys. So our children are up against a lot. I would tell our young black brothers and sisters that, you are brilliant, you are beautiful, you are special, and you can do anything you put your mind to. Despite all of the challenges that are in this country, you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think that it is on us as community members, as those of you who are parents, family members, to really uplift our children and to know that, there are people out there who, unfortunately, with the ways that racism plays out in school, who may tell our children in our community that they are not capable. And so I think it's really important for us to recognize the leadership skills that our children are bringing, that are often overlooked in our traditional kind of classroom spaces, but that are what makes them resilient and special, and for us to just really be advocates for our young people.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Those are encouraging words coming from a professor. I think the students must be enjoying. I wish I could go back and become your student again, Courtney. That's good. Okay, Latifa, add on to that. There are many young girls and boys who've come to this country to achieve the American dream, but sometimes we know this American dream is not as really we were promised. What do you say to them, especially those ones who are watching it right now?
Yeah, as I'm thinking about this, I think my advice for the black child, boys or girls, immigrant, African American, brown children, I think from my journey, my advice would be that who you are is not defined by where you are in your life right now. So, and I think what that means is that when you seek an opportunity, and we all seek opportunities in life, some people are looking for roles, some people are seeking for leadership roles, whether it's in the public sector, some people are entrepreneurs trying to start or grow a company, or you want to become something, when you grow up. Some kids are starting businesses. I bought lip gloss from a young woman when I, somewhere at a friend's, social distancing party we were at. So whatever opportunity you're pursuing, remember to tell the story of who you are, not where you are. And what I mean by that, I think a lot of people make the mistake of looking at your situation right now, and you use that to drive for what next opportunity you're looking for. So to break this down, to me, who you are entails your unique experiences that have shaped your worldview, your decisions on how you see the world and where you see yourself going. So that's why a Latifa coming from Uganda, working in rural districts of Kasese and Chenjojo, can come in a corporate environment where I did not have business corporate experience, but because my story and what I can accomplish, I'm able to tell my story, not just of where I am, but of who I am as a person, and other people are able to see that and see my value proposition. That's what, as a black child, is going to distinguish you from everybody else. So I just want to also make it clear, though, that that will make it likely for you to beat the odds and probably transcend the narrative of the challenges we are talking about in the systems we are living and working in every day in America. but we are not tokens. I also want to emphasize that. Us who make it, it does not mean that that is reflective of the US population. So when people use one-off examples of Obama or Michelle Obama, or see Latifah has this role or Courtney has done it this way, the statistics do not say we are reflective of the US population. But my advice to the Black child is maybe we will beat the statistics one day. Just craft your story and keep on fighting anyway.
Okay, very good. Well said. Hey, ladies, you know, sometimes, let me tell, I have to confess, sometimes it's not the easiest job to moderate a discussion of two extremely brilliant women, right? And I'm trying to swear here, but thank you for for allowing me to do this today. So on a lighter note, before I allow you guys to make your closing statement so that we bring on Dolphina from Kenya, it's COVID-19, it's the aftermath of George Floyd, and things are not very well. I'm going to start with you, Courtney. What is the most delicious African food that you've had?
Oh man, okay. Well, you know, that's a good question. I think probably the one that I've had that I've enjoyed, you know, I don't know the name of it, but you know I like jollof rice. And I've gone to, you know, a few events where, you know, I'm not sure what all was on it,
okay,
but that one,
was okay, Courtney, I'll make your life easier. The next time you're in St. Paul, Minneapolis, you and I are going to invite ourselves to Latifah's house to enjoy some Ugandan food. How is that? Okay, that's it, Latifah. Thank you, Latifah. To you, Latifah, what is your best African American music? What's your best?
Oh, that's a real good one. I mean, I like some R&B. I like some old, like hip hop from back in the day, like the Jarul kind, not the one of today. But I do love a lot of the African American music from back in the day, but some R&B anytime. Okay,
very good. Well said, thank you. So, Courtney, we have only 2 minutes to go. 1 minute, do you mind? We're going to have you alone on the screen and make your closing statement. There are people watching across the country. There are people watching from Kenya, from Uganda, and other parts of Africa. So, talk to the world. Your closing statement.
Yeah. So, thank you so much. I think one of the things just that really stands out in my mind that undergirds this conversation is that, you know, when we think about the U.S., when we think about colonization around the world, and the creation of race as an idea, it has been used to divide and conquer, right? And so when we think about the divisions between different people of African descent, it is up to us to be able to come together and learn about each other and our histories to understand how we can work in order to gain resources, to build power collectively, to transform unjust systems. And I also think as leaders, that it's important for us to support those who are coming up, right? Support the young people who may have radically different ideas than older generations, but to have a plan for us to carry on leadership so that we're bringing in our young people and as being leaders right now, because they're ready. And it's up to us at a certain point, and particularly as the older generations, to kind of get out of the way and let young people shine as well as leaders in our communities. So, you know, thank you for having me, Jeremiah, and it's been amazing to talk with you and Latifah. And I am just really hopeful about the partnership between Black Americans and immigrant communities from this conversation.
Thank you, Courtney. And to you, Latifah, closing statement, the world is watching you.
Yeah, so I think my quick closing statement here would be that the challenges that we face as Black people in America, whether it's African immigrants or Black women or Black men in America, they are real. They are real. Whether that's, the institutional oppression or racism or other challenges that we face, those challenges are real. But here is my closing message to all of you who are listening. I think that resilience is a must-have virtue for all of us as immigrants and Black women and men in America. There is so many obstacles that are coming that we have to navigate every single time and tackle as a Black person or immigrant person in America. So we have no choice but to be resilient. And to make that a bit more tangible, when doors close in your face, when you are in the thorns of injustice, it's very difficult, I know, but we have to pick ourselves up and we have to refuse to get derailed and maintain our focus to pursue our dreams. I think Courtney said it, I will repeat it. As immigrants, we've all had the mantra, you have to work 10 times harder. It's not going to become 9, 8, or 1. It's going to stay 10 times harder, if not higher. So always, always stay resilient. Produce quality work in everything that you do and do the best that you can, because we need to do that in order to be successful in this country. Thank you very much, Dr. Okari, for having me on your show. It's been really a pleasure, and I look forward to connecting to Courtney and perhaps we can have more engagements with the African American community, because to be honest, we are not doing as much today. So I think this is a great platform you're creating for us.
So before I let you go, you did make a promise. I did request you to promise the viewers that you will come back to continue this conversation. Courtney, yes, no?
Yes, a definite yes.
Latifa, yes, no?
That would be a yes from me as well, Dr. Okari.
No, thank you, ladies. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I'm quite frankly very, very glad to call you two good friends. Courtney, the story is long. 10 years ago, both of us laid off. But the story since then, as Latifa said, we did pick our pieces, and the story is very promising, and the future it couldn't be much brighter. Thank you for coming on, and we'll love to see you again here sometime soon. Latifa, thank you so much. I met you at a gas station. It's been fantastic, and I'm sure our viewers enjoyed that extremely brilliant and intellectual conversation. So thank you so much, ladies. I'll talk to you after the show. And for our viewers, before you step off, please go to Facebook on KDRTV, facebook.com, and like us and make a comment. Also go to YouTube and subscribe. All you need to do is just click subscribe. You don't have to pay anything, and that should be good. Also follow us on KDRTV on Twitter, and that'd be good for us. Again, for our viewers, stand by. We're going to go for a short commercial break, 2 minutes, and then we'll go to Kenya, and we're going to dissect the judicial system there, and Dolphina Alego is standing by. Thank you.
We know how stressful it can get to take care of the healthcare needs of your loved ones, especially when they live far away from you. Money transfer services have expensive fees. They cannot ensure that your money is spent on the intended healthcare needs. And there are many questionable pharmacies that sell low-quality, unsafe, and even counterfeit medications. That is why we created Diaspora, a secure, quick, and cost-effective way to pay for the medications of your loved ones through our network of accredited and registered pharmacies. So here's how it works. Meet David. He lives far away from home. Unfortunately, his mother was recently diagnosed with diabetes, but she can't afford her new medication. So after funding his Diaspora account, David enrolls his mother as a beneficiary, and a unique PIN code is issued. Think of this as a digital voucher that David paid for in advance. David's mother presents the PIN code at one of our accredited and registered in-network pharmacies. The cost of her medication is deducted from David's account, and his mother can walk in and out of the pharmacy with the medication she needs. It's as easy as that. David can also assign his uncle who lives close to his mother as a caretaker to help her follow the new diabetes treatments. For extra security, David can also create one-time PIN codes and manually confirm and approve medication purchases too. It's easy to send more money home and hope they got spent on buying safe medication. But what if you can have control over how your money is spent? Gain access to safe and quality medication, and purchase multiple medications for multiple family members who are in need. Your money goes a lot farther, and healthcare becomes a lot more inclusive. Diaspora was created by Diaspora members for Diaspora members that help provide greater access to safe, quality and affordable medications for your loved ones back home. It's time for your loved ones to get the quality medication they need and for you to get the peace of mind you deserve. Sign up today and register your loved ones for free at diaspocare.com.
Yeah, and hello again. Welcome back. Welcome to KDRTV Live, wherever you might be watching us again from around the world. It is 11:25 Central Time here in the United States. It's 12:25 East Coast, and it is 7:25 East African Time. So, as we promised, we are back live, and we're going to go to Nairobi, I think about 200 miles west of the capital, Nairobi, to Eldoret Town, where we're bringing in Dolphina Alego, and as we promised, we're going to go to Kenya and have a discussion around some of the issues affecting the judicial system in Kenya. Again, as we promised last time, we're trying to connect with the diasporans back home. We've had a conversation with the politicians. We had Professor Nyangi Nyong'o here not too long ago. We also had the Optivin people from the business community. We also had people from the radio, the Egesa FM, and I was here talking about different aspects of the political environment in Kenya. And we also had Walter Nyambane from the Office of the President in Kenya, who gave us the government position on how they're dealing with the youth. So today we're going to go to another interesting topic. We're looking at the judicial system in Kenya. What is the judicial system? Does the law in Kenya really work, or doesn't it work? And what does the future look like? That said, again, next week we'll be talking about other aspects. And now joining us live from Eldoret in Western Kenya is Dolphina Alego herself. Hi, Dolphina, how are you?
Hi, Dr. How are you?
I am doing pretty good. You know, let me start before I even introduce you to our viewers. One thing, and I'm sure a lot of diasporans watching you from across the United States or Europe or anywhere around the world, the one thing is they miss home. Habari ya nyumbani?
Salama kabisa.
So before we even get there, just make us jealous. What are we missing? I know I miss a lot of matokes in Kisii. I miss nyama choma. What else are we missing?
You're missing fish and good tea, real good tea, you know. And mursik, for those in Eldoret, I know they're missing mursik.
Okay, okay. So again, thank you. Don't make us too jealous. You want to cry on air, but here they're the same. So it's good to have you here, Dolphina. As we said for our viewers, Dolphina is joining us from Eldoret in Kenya. And what we want to do today is to have a discussion around a major aspect that are happening in Kenya. Today we're going to focus on the judicial system. We did have a perspective from the politicians, I said moments ago, but today let's go to the judicial system. And Dolphina, do you mind if very quickly you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Thank you so much, Dr. Okari. My name is Dolphina Alego. I work as a magistrate, a senior principal magistrate in the judiciary in Kenya, currently stationed in Kakamega in Western Province. I also hold other responsibilities apart from being a judicial officer. I'm also a mother to very many children. I think that I hold passionate to my heart. Yeah, and I love diversity.
Dolphina, your resume is way too long. I have it right here. It's way too long to tell because you're extremely brilliant. Your accomplishments are a lot, and I don't want to go through that if you don't mind. For example, you've served as an advocate for the High Court of Kenya, and currently, as you said, serving as a sitting judicial officer in the Kenya judicial system. Your specialization is wide. I can't mention this enough. You're specialized in gender and conflict resolution, having attained the same at Kofi Annan International Peace Training Institution as in Ghana and the Alego Institute of International Affairs in Accra. That's a massive accomplishment. You also an experienced human rights and women's rights lawyer, advocacy program development, public interest, litigation, trading, a lot of these interesting factors. But today we want to stop at that and focus on what is happening in the judicial system in Kenya. As you talk about the judicial system in Kenya very quickly, right? Give us a quick background. How did you get where you are?
A very good question, Dr. Okari. I got appointed as a magistrate in 2002 and actually started working in 2003. And it's been a journey. So I've been in this for about like 17, 18 years, so to speak. And during that time that the Chief Justice then was the The Chief Justice was Chunga. He's a Chunga, yes. He was the Chief Justice then. And during those days, we didn't have a Judicial Service Commission as we have it now, because the Judicial Service Commission actually came in after the new constitution. So that was the new goodies on the block in 2010. And prior to that, we started in as what we call a District Magistrate 2 professional. Even further down was a District Magistrate 3, who was a lay magistrate, somebody who just knew how it worked around in the court, and they were given that honor to work as magistrates then. So they were called lay magistrates then. So we worked with them, and it was quite humbling because you could get somebody who could really tie the ropes on for you and see how it works. The difference was that you went to law school, they didn't go to law school, but they still served as magistrates then. But it was still humbling that you could always get to know how the ropes works then. And there we were. And you starting from a District Magistrate 2 professional, you get into a resident magistrate, a senior resident magistrate, a principal magistrate, and currently where I am as a senior principal magistrate. So just one more to a chief magistrate, and then basically done as a magistrate.
Okay, so Dolphina, I think the audio is having a technical problem now with the audio. Let's talk about this. Obviously, one of the major issues affecting people, whether personal life, families, or businesses, and everywhere, is COVID-19. And you see our sponsors there, the Hennepin County COVID-19. I really want to continue the conversation without asking you how you are dealing with this COVID-19. I understand most people are working from home here in the U.S., and I think somewhere yesterday in the newspapers I read something to the effect that it's you in Eldoret and Kakamega, you guys are working remotely. Do you mind sharing us your experience with this COVID-19?
It's a very humbling question to ask Dr. Okari. And I think COVID-19 has changed so many things worldwide. And in Africa, in Kenya, immediately that it happened, and we had to be innovative. So what we did as the Kenyan judiciary, we had to go look into the internet connectivity in wherever you work in. And for me, working in Kakamega, so what we needed to do first and foremost during that time, basically nothing was going on. But you know, if anybody was found on the wrong side of the law, justice still had to continue happening one way or the other. So what happened is we had to get connectivity, and we now had to work remotely from home, connect to the prisons department and the police stations wherever we were working or connected to. And that's how we had to start. And prior to that, what we were doing is basically, for me, and this is what I really found very humbling, that despite COVID-19, we still had to administer justice. And what I did, and I still do it up to now when I'm having a physical court, is I work from under a tree. So what happens is that whoever is brought before me in court will all be under this tree, and we'll have the prison departments and the judiciary sitting there, and the lawyers under this tree, because that is what COVID has really brought us up to. Because you can't stop really working because COVID is here with us. You have to be innovative, so to speak. So that is how most of us have been working. And if you're lucky enough and there's connectivity, maybe my colleagues working in Nairobi, for them, I think connectivity is not a problem. But for us in the remote areas, you have to also consider this other person who's brought before you. Does he have access to internet, or can they get bundles to have their case heard from the comfort of their home, which is usually not the case. So it humbles you to be innovative and to see how best to handle all these things going on.
Good. Thank you, Dolphina. So having an audio issue there.
No, you're fine. Talk.
Let's talk about the Judicial Service Commission of Kenya. So pretty soon here, the service is going to have in elections, and I think that's important. If you look at people around the world, including the United States, one of the reasons why some of these countries really develop or rather move faster than we do is because there's the rule of law. And respecting the rule of law is paramount to any social, economic, and political development. So do you mind sharing to our viewers, especially the diasporans, what is it about the Judicial Service Commission? Talk briefly about the elections and what you're running for.
Now, the Judicial Service Commission was actually brought in with the new constitution in 2010. It is under Article 171, 172, and it constitutes quite a number of people who run the affairs of the JSC. In short, we call it the JSC, the Judicial Service Commission. Now, it is an important commission because running the everyday affairs of how the judiciary in Kenya runs is part and parcel of the rule of law. So we have the president, who is the JSC, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, who sits in this commission. We have a representative from the Law Society of Kenya, a male and a female of 15 years standing, who also sit in this commission, who represent the lawyers in the country. We also have a Public Service Commission. We also have a judge for the Court of Appeal. We have a judge from the Supreme Courts, and also a judge for the High Court. And we also have two people who represent the public, who are appointees by the executive, who sit in this commission. So in all this, it is encompassed that everybody is included to participate in this JSC to represent the Kenyans in and out of the country. So in this, shortly in December, we have one lady who represents the magistracy, and her term comes to an end in December. So this is the post I'm vying for. She's done her bit very well. Her second term ends in December. So we have these elections in December.
Okay, so Dolphina, part of the reason why you're having us on the show here, you're talking directly to diasporans. I think across the U.S., we have about around 180 Kenyan lawyers here, extremely brilliant lawyers here who are working tirelessly. We also have almost 180,000 Kenyans across the U.S. who desperately want to see the country grow, not just economically, but really they want to see the rule of law. That's very paramount for us. And some of your competitors as well are watching right now from Nairobi. And they really, especially diasporans, are so interested to see who is going to be their partner. So the question for you, looking at, of course, your resume is very, very, very good, very impressive, but what distinguishes you from your competitors? What makes you unique for the position that you're aspiring for?
Thank you so much, Dr. Okari. My competitors, we have 5 currently vying for this particular post. And the diversity involved is quite enriching. What makes me diversify from all of us is that I work in the rural areas. I born bred in Nairobi, but my career path took me out of Nairobi. So I have worked in Siaya. I have worked in Kakamega. I'm currently working in Kakamega. I've worked in Kapsabet, that is Nandi County. I've worked in Wasingishu, that is in Eldoret, Low Court. And in all this, having been, born, bred in town in Nairobi, but here's an opportunity now that you come and meet with the real Wanjiku, the real woman in the village who doesn't speak, English or Kiswahili, but speaks the local dialect wherever you are working at that particular point. And at the end of the day, you have to, justice must be seen to be done. You must converse to hear what brings this old woman to your court or this old man to your court, who you, one or the other, you're not able to understand each other because of different backgrounds, 1, and 2, because he or she only understands the local dialect. Does that then mean that he or she cannot get justice? The answer is yes. He or she must get justice. So how do you become innovative under the JSC, under the judiciary system, to hear this old woman or old man or even a younger boy or a younger girl get justice? So that is where my diversity comes in, that I'm able to humble myself at that level to give justice as need be to anybody who comes before me.
Okay, Dolphina, good point. I've had conversations with you privately, and I find you a very humble person, extremely brilliant, and I'm sure our viewers are going to find you the same. But I've also had discussions with friends of mine who are lawyers based in Nairobi, and one of the criticisms that they have for you is pretty much what you just answered. They said, no, you're not at the center of the political theater, which is in Nairobi. You're not seen in the bars drinking and all that kind of stuff, and therefore kind of politically, they seem to say you're aged out. And you're a woman, you are a stickler of the law. I'm going to refer you to what Justice Mutunga, Willie Mutunga, who I know you know very well, former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Kenya, extremely brilliant person, as you know, and there are lawyers across the country are watching this. He once said a year or so ago, he was speaking to a magazine in the Netherlands, and that's the NRC, and he said corruption in Kenya stretches from the very bottom to the very top. That's what he's talking about. And remember, that's the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya talking to a foreign magazine, depicting a very bad state of affairs in the country. In fact, the father gives an example of a policeman who takes a bribe from a motorist somewhere in my rural village in Kisii, and that money is shared to the very top. That's very painful for diasporans to watch. And I'm going to quote exactly his words. He says, the influence of the cartels is overwhelming. If we do not fight the cartels, we become their slaves. But leaders who do take on the cartels must be prepared to be killed or exiled. Dolphina, you're extremely brilliant. You're a mother. Are you ready for this?
You know, corruption fights back, and I totally agree with the sentiments of the former Chief Justice. As you rightly say, a very exposed personality, a person who, could take anything the way it came. And at the same time, very humbling Chief Justice he was. And we learned a lot from him. I totally agree. Corruption is really a menace in this country. A lot of things are not really working out the way they should be working out. Even in diaspora, I think some of your issues are like, if you came home and, the issues of your taxes, are they being utilized properly? Because even within ourselves, we have these things going. I would be lying to say that we don't have corruption in the judiciary. It is there. The question is, how then do we handle it? How then do you bring it up and, really bring it down? It might not be eradicated, but it has to have the political willpower that this, menace of a situation needs to be curbed down or totally eradicated. So the question is, how then do we do it? Even as judicial officers, we should be able to, to face this thing the way it is. Are we known that we are able to lead by example, or is it that you can buy justice in our courts? That's the big question, That's the big question that we all must be asking ourselves. And you see, moral issues are very personal, Moral issues are very personal, and even in Chapter 6 under the Constitution, the question is, Okari, are you able to be a leader who can influence by the things that you do, in or out, whether somebody is watching you or not watching you? Are you able to live by your word? What you say is what you do. And I think that is what we should be doing. I don't need to be telling people I'm this. People should know me by my acts, because it's a moral issue that you should be able to inculcate even when you're doing your works in the courtroom.
That's quite uplifting, and let's focus on the position you're running for. Obviously, is a women representative, and we want to shout a big shout out to your competitors. They're fantastic women, and I think part of what we're doing, we as the diasporans, we're saying, look, for a long time the women didn't have much voice, but at least that's progress when we see that, and we're seeing healthy competition among yourselves. So we salute the competitors who are doing the same. So going forward, and honestly, as I speak to you, and I've been privately had long, very nice conversations, I don't want to sound biased, but honestly, I don't see why you don't end up being the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya at some time in the future. You're very honest, you're very articulate, and I'm not campaigning for you, but I'm just saying that's quite encouraging. But where do you see the future of women in the legal system of Kenya, and particularly in the leadership part of it?
It's a very good question. And women and leadership, when you're a woman leader, it is not as easy as when we have our male counterparts. What really happens is that even as a magistrate, I think what you would have in your desk would be quite different with the male counterpart. Because for a woman, you must think like, okay, if you're a mother or you're a caregiver, you also must balance this, not have one outdoing the other. But unlike for our male counterparts, we are able to, they are able to rather, they can live very far away from their families and still be able to juggle the whole thing. But you have to be very careful how to balance this career. Usually as a magistrate, there's nothing. I mean, there are no true rules about it. You must be as good as in and out. In the courtroom, you must be good. And even outside, you must be equally good. If I was maybe to go out with Okari elsewhere, and I'm seen and I'm known that she's a magistrate, what would be going out is so different. When you went out, if you were to go out with a male counterpart, so even the perception, as in this is Africa, it's not like in the US whereby nothing really matters. But I think in Africa, we still have a lot of things, behavioral changes and all that. We have a lot of things to embrace, so that you're able to articulate this. Getting back to the issue of women and leadership, even for the judiciary, I think up there in the Supreme Court, we only have 2 ladies, and basically the rest are men. And getting back, even when you get down to the Court of Appeal and to the High Court and to the magistracy, at least as an institution, there's almost a balance, but we are really not yet there. And some of the issues that maybe women get to and inculcate into themselves when issues arise, that are they able to do this and that. Issues of transfers are a big issues for women. Issues of maybe working in very tough scenarios are an issue to women, because maybe you're just starting out your family and you're looking at it, where will my kids go to school? If it is a male counterpart, you might decide okay, fine, I will station my children here with my wife, and I can even work anywhere in the country. So that is where the difference lies in for this particular job. So those are some of the welfare issues that really must be articulated.
Thank you. Dolphina, when you look up to the page, the Judicial Service of Kenya, who are some of the best lawyers, magistrates that you really look up to and say, wow, if I could, I want to be like him or her, or be something beyond that?
Oh, wow, this is interesting. I would want to call out to mentors, people who have really held your hands and mentored you. And I have really had the opportunity, because mentorship is about a give and take. I would be willing to be mentored and not get a mentor. And at the same time, somebody would be willing to mentor me and I refuse to be mentored. So that is also a huge thing. And one of the things that I've taken passionately, even in my campaigns, I have intentionally made it that I will have to mentor most of my colleagues, those who agree that I could mentor them, because I am a product of being mentored, and it has taken me this far. And that is why I have this passion that it is time for me to stand up and also mentor the rest, so that we have an institution which is intentional about what they want to do. If we don't speak the same language as an institution, because this is it's a small institution, though it is one arm of the government. But if we are not intentional about mentorship, I think we'll get it all wrong. Because this is one thing that, if tomorrow, Dr. here, you read about me in the newspapers, and we are having this tete-a-tete as we are doing right now, and you're like, but I spoke to Dolphina yesterday. What is this that I'm reading? That's already a perception. So you have to be intentional about mentorship, about holding somebody's hand and showing that these are the ropes. This is not a job that you can do anything, anywhere that you want. There's so much perception. You could be seen somewhere and it will be like, what is she doing there? Or what is she doing, at this particular time? She should be in the house, or she should be in court at this time. So there's a lot of mentorship in this particular job. Getting back to the question about mentorship, I would say I really have been honored to have so many women and men in the judiciary holding my hand, who are still there and who have maybe since left the judiciary.
I think you're a very good politician. You made sure you don't mention the name. That's pretty good. That's very brilliant. That's very brilliant. I appreciate that. And I won't push you further than that. I appreciate it. That's smart. So before I have you talk to diasporans, because the diasporans are watching, particularly the Law Society of the Kenyan Law Society in America, they're watching this. So before I move on, a few weeks ago on the show, I had some of the most brilliant Kenyan lawyers in the U.S. discussing about different legal matters, and one of the on the show was one of Kenya's, I think, one of the most brilliant lawyers I've ever seen, Mong'are from North Carolina. And she mentioned the fact that whenever she goes to the courtroom, the first thing she does is that she kneels down and says prayers before she even goes to the courtroom. That's something I never heard of, and I learned that right on the show a few weeks ago. To you, what role will religion play in your endeavors?
Dr. Okari, that is very close to my heart. I think I got into the judiciary when I was still in my 20s. And, it shapes your life, because I also left the country before I was 18. So here I was, and you're out of the country, you're on your own, and then you come back again into an institution which is basically like a Vatican. I would actually say almost 100%. If it was not for God, I don't think I'd be where I am. And that this has really played a lot for me, because you see, when you're young, you're able to do anything, and it's not like you're cast in stone about every other thing. But because of God, this is a job that if in the event that you do anything wrong, you'll be making news for the right or the wrong reasons. So it is one thing that I've learned, that I need to always pray and thank God in the morning and in the evening, even waking up, especially with COVID. I have known that even waking up in the morning it's not a walk in the park. You really, you have to be intentional. You have to pray about each and everything. It even gets worse for some of us who are doing petitions during elections, election petitions. You don't know who is following up, because you see, this is politics. You are deciding whether, Dr. Okari is going to be the next MP for, this constitution or something like that. And you never know who is following you. Unfortunately for the magistrates, we don't have any, what is it called, security,
and then you
as opposed to our seniors, the judges.
Okay.
So this makes it all different. So what you need to do is literally you're on your knees, that during this time when you're having all these sort of cases, you're on your knees asking God to protect you during this time. Because, in politics in Kenya can really, really get nasty. And, people put a lot of their money and a lot of their emotions in politics. So nobody's willing to be defeated and say that I didn't win these elections. So you really have to, for me, it's, I have to thank God every other time, and I have to be praying to God to help me through from morning to evening. And in the evening, really thank God that it has gone well.
Okay. Oh, that's oh, do we? Okay. Oh, that's very nice to hear that. And I did notice that even the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Maraga, does go to church and believes in that. That's good to hear. So let's switch focus now to the diasporans. The diasporans are watching, and they want to have questions for you. Before I even ask you any specific questions, some of them I'm sure they're going to pose a few questions for you. When you think about the diasporans, the tens of thousands of Kenyans who've come in the U.S. or everywhere else around the world, they really want to have a good system. And they really want to have a good partner in the Judicial System Service Commission of Kenya, and more especially those brothers and sisters who are in that part of the department. What are the 2 or 3 specific areas that you think you're going to be a friend and partner with?
For me, networking and bonding and partnerships are huge. I am a product of partnerships. I was in the US, I think 2 years ago in Stanford. That was a partnership program. It was a fellowship program. So I understand with my friends out there in the diaspora, they keep on, calling you and telling you that we need to come home. And I think what really strikes me out, and I think something which should really be taken into focus, is especially when you guys are coming back home and the issue of the dual citizenship, and you still have to pay this $50 thing, and you're a Kenyan. The question is, how then are you a Kenyan? So those are some of the pertinent issues that really, really have to push it to the wall, because you are a Kenyan by right, by birth, and the fact that you live in the US does not make you, any less a Kenyan. Number 2, I know you guys send a lot of money back to Kenya. And the question is, why is it that you can't really, enjoy the taxes that you send back home? Most of you, sometimes when you have this tete-a-tete, are like, it's time for me to get back home. But your thinking is it any better for me when I go home? So I think we should make it so comfortable that any Kenyan working in the US or staying in the US coming home is able to come home without thinking twice and holding back into anything. So I believe those are some of the issues, even in partnership with LSK, the Law Society of Kenya, who are also really, really, putting their feet down. I think this is one thing that we need to partner with. Even if it's a public interest litigation kind of suit, this should go into the highest of the courts, if I may say so that you guys can come home without thinking twice. This is home at the end of the day. And, not doing that means also we are discriminating the Kenyans in diaspora. And I know one of the topics you guys are really having the back and forth is about your voting rights. And other countries, Eritrea and these other countries are able to vote from wherever they are. So why is it that Kenyans in diaspora are not able to vote when it comes to voting time? You equally have rights, just like any other Kenyans, in disregard of where you're currently staying. Yes, I can see a question about if I could speak to the young girls watching me around the world on if elected, what value will it bring into the JSC to the culture? I'm very passionate about the culture. Not that I don't also, have the passion with the boy child. I mean, I have spoken about mentorship, and I've spoken about me being mentored as a judicial officer. I would be failing in my responsibilities not to hold on to the girl child, also to even surpass me where I am. So this is also very close to my heart, and we should make these girls believe that you can do it, and you can even do it better. I think about 10 years ago, something like that, when I was brought into work in Wasingishu, that is an Eldoret, a colleague of mine asked me to go and talk to the children in Tot. Tot is about 8 hours from Eldoret. And it has all this rustling kind of, activities going on in this place called Tot. So we drove through the night. We arrived in the morning, and I was very, very humbled to see how in those deep, setups of, the Kalenjin setup. It's a place called Tot. And, they dress in clothes which are, patched up. This girl has to go to school. These girls do not have, sanitary pads. And I actually told my colleague, and I told him, and I saluted him, I told him, Honorable Mheshimiwa, I will never look at you the same way as after you've brought me to your place. And I spoke to those girls for 2 days. It was bordering the border of Ethiopia. And the only thing I was hearing then was, guns being shot left, right, and center. It is a cattle wrestling place that even security is not guaranteed. So you can imagine somebody who has been raised in that setup, more so a girl child. What better thing can I do and only not get back there every other time and encourage this girl child and hold them by the hand and continue ensuring that it is possible, it is doable, you can make it. It doesn't matter from where you come from. It is only that you have to be intentional, that you can do it, and somebody has to hold their hands. That's what I can say about the culture.
So, okay, thank you. There are no questions to come, but I have another question for you on the same note. So, and I gave this example to Professor Nyang' Nyong'o last time when him and I had a conversation here about how sometimes the Kenyan system, whether socio-economic or political environment, sometimes take for granted the role that the diasporans work. And I gave an example of what our students do. Of course, they work very hard to retain their very best in their home country. That's okay. And then the next part, there are policies, what they call the return policies, that for those ones who are returning, at least they have incentive to go back to their country and still continue to contribute. But for those ones who become citizens in home countries, just for example, us who have chosen to be U.S. citizens, at least there should be policy from which we work. What role do you think? We have over 150 Kenyan lawyers in the U.S. I know Wakilo Pande from Texas is watching. Mweni, Ongeri, you shall see Ongeri there, Omari, and many others are watching. What role do you think they should play to make sure that the judicial system in Kenya improves?
A very good question. And what I would want to engage in is we need to have this conversation going on. And on, just as you said, you could have, Dr. Okari here, you could say I'm good. I'm in the US. I really don't have it so close to my heart. I'm just saying that it's just a living in banter. Sure. Yeah. But exactly. Yeah, but exactly. Looking back is that I believe even if you are in the US, you still have family in Kenya. So you can't, close your eyes and say that I don't care anymore about what is happening in Kenya. If we were at war, I believe you'd care more because maybe your mother still lives here. So the rule of law is very important. And part of my agenda is that we need to have this engagement moving forward. We should just not leave it at this and say that we don't care about the lawyers in the US. We don't care about, maybe the lawyers who want to become judges back in this country. We don't care. It is not something we should have in our mind. The question is, what are the partnerships, what are the engagements, the network and the bonding that can, have this gap not being there at all, so to speak, so that we can hear what you guys are saying. Maybe we have just decided to close our eyes, which should not be the case, because you have your taxes coming in here. You guys are spending a lot of money, and every other time. So where are we taking your money to, Because you guys also have, I called you the 48th county. Allow me to say that, yeah.
I like that
at the end of the day, yes, you are sending money to Kenya. And this sending money to Kenya, meaning that you are still close to whoever is in Kenya, whether they're your relatives, whether you're your friends or something like that. So you're a county which cannot be ignored. Ignoring you as a county, for me, is discrimination.
So that question again, and I'm going to add on to that. Your running of this office is not just about the office, it's a big picture. And moments ago, I had a good discussion with two wonderful ladies talking about experiences of black women here in the United States. On the same token, what do you say to that question?
Yes, I think that was a women in leadership, if I got it right, in, I think, immigrant women.
Preen, have you experienced any gender biases as a female mistress? What advice could you give to young female law students? And this is in the context of those ones in Nairobi, without due respect, are dismissing you as a woman in a small town who probably does not understand the politics of Nairobi, and that to get elected, you might not be able to perform very well. So in that context, how do you respond to that?
A very good question, but with a bias. What I'd say, I would still say that, the fact that some of us were raised and went to school in Nairobi, for me, it's a humbling opportunity now to work in the countryside. And the things that I never saw when I was growing up, I'm now seeing them in the countryside. So having to say that a few of us, or rather it's only me because my colleagues are not working in the countryside, but basically in Nairobi or in a city, so to speak. I don't think that is a bias. The question would be, let me turn it around and ask this question. If we all refuse not to work in the countryside, who will? Does it mean that Kenyans working in the countryside or even in this, what is it called, diversity, are lesser Kenyans? That shouldn't be the case. I mean, you might be working in Nairobi, but your parents live in the countryside. So should we be discriminating them because basically they are people who live in the countryside? I think that is a mishap or a misrepresentation of anything to call it, because I believe we are all Kenyans at the end of the day. But the kind of cases maybe I would be having in Western could not be the kind of cases maybe what I handled when I was in the Rift Valley, so to speak, or what I'd be handling in Nairobi. So one thing about being a judicial officer, you sign it up and say you can work anywhere, because around the continent or around Kenya, we are still Kenyans at the end of the day. So you should be able to work anywhere. Yeah. Today I might be working in Western. Tomorrow I might be working in Rift Valley. The next time you might even be in Nairobi. But we are all Kenyans, and you should serve Kenyans wherever they are. For me, that's a plus. Working anywhere is a plus. So that should not even be taken that I'm a less judicial officer. Yeah, as you've rightly spoken, and even in my working in the outskirts of Nairobi, has not made me a lesser magistrate. I think it has even exposed me to so many things that I would not have known had I stayed in Nairobi.
There are Kenyans in the U.S. who are not lawyers, and they're deeply concerned about the corruption in Kenya. What do you say to them?
Just as I've spoken earlier, I would be, putting a blind eye to say that we don't have corruption. But I thank the current Chief Justice, who I think he's been very passionate fighting corruption in the judiciary. And anytime even you go for our interviews, he'll ask you, what is it that you're doing about corruption at your court station? Because it's not something that we are hiding. It is something that is there with us. So if it can be at a court station, what makes us think that it's not within the country? So the thing is, it is something that we must have the political willpower to fight corruption. Our current Chief Justice has even put in about 10 magistrates or so handling anti-corruption cases in Nairobi. Gazettements of magistrates have been done all over the country so that you're able to handle corruption cases. The law in Kenya also says that they're handled on day-to-day basis, but you have to be also, as a judicial officer, you must have the willpower also to fight corruption, because it's also, corruption fights back. And usually when you're handling corruption cases, I can tell you for sure, Daktari, that they will always, always try and look for you and, try and, talk to you. I'm being polite and do every other thing. So if you are one person that can always engage with any other person, not that it's bad to engage, but you really have to be very careful what your circles of friends are. Otherwise, if you think that this is the one case that can always make my life bearable, and you might want to agree, then I think that is the beginning of your downfall. I speak with authority because I know what I stand for. I lost you, Daktari.
Oh, sorry. The question we have on the screen, who votes for the JC position you are vying for?
Oh, the people who are meant, the eligible voters, are basically the magistrates who vote for the magistrate representative. So on the 5th of December, basically the people who are going to be casting their votes are the magistrates. That does not mean that, you as Okari could even have a son who is a magistrate. And we are having this engagement because JSC is not just for magistrates and judges. JSC is for all Kenyans. The Judicial Service Commission in Kenya is for all Kenyans. And that would mean that you have a say as to who maybe the next Chief Justice in Kenya will be, or any other members of the JSC will be. So you have a say, you can lobby, you can engage, you can have your networks, because here we are showcase what we are able to do. And that would mean any Kenyans outside there can have an influence who the next commissioner for the magistracy is. But the people who are voting are basically the magistrates and the kadhis.
Okay, so what do you say to your competitors in Nairobi?
My competitors are worthy opponents. All of them, we are 5 in number. We have Honorable Terry Nyangena, a very beautiful, nice girl. We have Honorable Atambo, also they're all my friends. We have Honorable Atambo, Honorable Evelyn Olwande, and Honorable Florence Masharia. One thing is yes, we are in it because, and I must congratulate them, this is not a walk in the park. It is something that you must sit down and think about it before you offer your candidature. For me, they are beautiful girls who have offered themselves in leadership, and that also shows that on a SWOT analysis, our strengths are out there now, our weaknesses, threats, and opportunities are out for Kenyans now to make a decision who next is their JSC commissioner. So I keep on encouraging for those, we talk at the end of the day. I mean, on the 6th of December, I think we need to take a break. We just need to go out and just be girls at the end of the day.
Dolphina, for our viewers, those who have questions, go ahead and post the questions on Facebook, and then Dolphina will have a moment to answer one or two before we finish up. Dolphina, on a lighter note, what do you do for fun during this corona pandemic?
What I do for fun?
Yes.
I love rearing chicken. You see, that gives me, it just gives me, and I think some of my friends know that, sometimes I'll tell you, I will call you in a bit because I'm doing something with the chicken. Yeah. I am one person that I think I can get to the very low and I can also engage to the very high.
Yeah.
Life has really humbled me, and I mean, nothing makes me dirty not to get my clean money. That's one thing I've put in myself. And I've also raised my children to believe that anything legit can make your life better.
Wow. That's a nice one. So I'm hoping there are more questions from the technical guys trying to pull some questions. So what do you say to the young girl watching you right now?
Dr. One thing that I do, even not just because I'm running for JSC, I'm not huge on really, engaging in the public, and this is what I do. But I have a very strong support system of girls that, that surround me, and we're there for each other. And we have intentional that, you have to serve humanity. So at times when we are all together and, we are just girls, we go to children's homes, we go to the prisons and all that, and just make people believe that it is doable. No situation is permanent, and that you can always get out of this mud. You can be born and think that I was born in a very low-casted kind of situation, and you can't make it. But how many today? I think I was reading in the newspapers, the lady who has just gotten a PhD, is it at 32? Some girl from Makweni, and she's just gotten a PhD in the US. I mean, that is the kind of story you should be reading about people. I don't need to say what I do behind the scenes, but what makes me happy and I sleep soundly if I'm able to change somebody's perspective. Like in the judiciary, I know my elder sister, the current commissioner who is now exiting, has done her part, but we have learned a lot from her. So the thing is, we can only make it better for the next incoming commissioner, and we have to start from home. When I say we start from home, we have the judicial staff who need, you need to hear them, and what is it that you're able to do for them? We have our fellow magistracy. How can we make their lives better? You have to hear them, and I'm doing a lot of listening. One thing I have made intentional that I will not do a lot of talking, because it is time to listen to the people I want to serve, both the judicial staff and both the magistracy. And again, I have to listen to my seniors who have mentored me. That does not mean that they will not need my vote, because if we have to vote for somebody to get to another chance to get to a higher hierarchy in the judiciary, I must listen to them. I am not perfect as a human being, but learning is a continuous process. You have to keep learning. You have to have these partnerships. You have to have these networks. And I believe that even one of these opportunities, I could be able to come over and have this engagement with the lawyers in the US and see how best we can make Kenya a better place once I'm there. It is not a show of kind of, a seat that I just want. I think for me, it's cut out for me. I mean, the leadership that we must do, it's either I do it and I can sleep easy on the 5th and say, I did my best. If I get it, I know I still have a lot of work to do. I have worked in the countryside. I don't know if people know that we have courts even without toilets, So how do you dispense justice if you are also in a court setup that you don't even have a toilet? Sorry to bring this up, but that is how dear our situations can be. I'm hoping that in my campaigns, I'm really passionate, especially to move into situations whereby you have colleagues in far-fledged areas and they are still passionate about delivering justice. So we have a lot of work to do. We thank the current commission. They've done their best. It can only get better.
Dolphina, listening you, it's so humbling to listen, and the way you're so eloquent and to the point. That's important. Okay, and we're hoping you'll come back to the show and continue this conversation, because it's pretty much what most diasporans are looking for. They want to make sure we have somebody who's going to be a partner, a friend in driving a positive message for the country, either in Kenya or here abroad. So before we finish, and I'm going to have you in mind, think about the Kenyans across the U.S., Kenyans around the world.
Yes.
I want you to speak to them. What do you need from them? What are you going to do to them as you make your closing statement?
Thank you so much, Dr. Kenyans in diaspora, we love you. We appreciate you. You know, you've taken a sacrifice to walk away from home. It could be for, you know, for all the reasons, or, you know, because you couldn't get it so well in Kenya and looking for opportunities out there. But we appreciate you. The kind of taxes you guys are paying, it shouldn't be anything that we should just be taking it for granted. And I hope, you know, moving forward, because I have, as I've said, I am a product of networking, of bonding, of partnerships. I am praying that I'll get an opportunity to come and meet you out there. We have these serious discussions, and the most important thing that we must implement anything we sit down as diasporians out there and what you want your Kenya to be. You still remain Kenyans at the end of the day. Nothing changes that, whether you are now an American citizen, but you still have family back in Kenya or even friends in Kenya. So if we are not there to support you, and you already are supporting us back in Kenya, I think partnership is nothing that we can just put under the carpet. This is open. We can still have this discussion. And I am one person who is very accessible at any given time. I am open to this debate further moving on. And even with the partnerships with the LSK, the Law Society of Kenya, that what is it as a JSC, because even the Law Society of Kenya representatives sit in the JSC. What is it that we can make diasporans, you know, have it looking much better and looking forward to coming home?
I think that's, thank you, Dolphina. I think that's very well said. I can't thank you enough that it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I think we've had private conversations. I think you're up to the task. I think we here in diaspora appreciate that. And I think almost everybody here is saying we need partnership. That's the most important part. Of course, we've had politicians come here, and sometimes politicians, some of them are watching. I think they're pretty much a joke. I think they take the diasporans for granted, but we're here to make the story. I think we're the best ambassadors. I'm not sure whether you've traveled to many countries, Dolphina. Have you ever seen a Kenyan who doesn't have this?
I have one. I even have one. You see?
You see? Whenever you see this.
I have it because, yeah, and I have it because I know the pride, you know, when usually when you're leaving the country, and this is humbling, and let me say this, I am a product of partnerships. I have traveled the world, and not because I say it for the sake of saying it. You know, when I say partnerships move a lot of things, when I was in Eldoret, working in Eldoret, we had partnership with the USAID, you know, when the President Obama was in power. And what happened? We actually made the court go virtual. So now that COVID is here with us, you know, this is a court which already went virtual, and it is simply because there were partnerships. So partnerships can take you far. And I would still want us to engage on issues partnership with the diasporans.
So Dolphina, my technical guy, was talking to me. He's just reminding me that she's very eloquent, very smart. Surely she should be the president of the Supreme Court of Kenya. That's what so you have his vote. So anyway, thank you so much for talking to KDRTV, and I want to promise you that you are a friend to the network. So anytime you want to communicate to the diasporians, we'll be very happy to have you on. I think that's a clear promise to you. Again, thank you so much for talking, and we'll talk right after the show.
Thank you so much, Dr. It's been my pleasure.
As well, thank you. So, and for our viewers, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been an interesting conversation earlier on. We had a discussion around the black and immigrant women in the United States, looking at some of the challenges that the women go through here. But I think regardless of the challenges, we should be looking at it from a positive end, that those challenges make us better, not individually, but collectively. And also, we've had a very interesting conversation with Dolphina Alego. They are in Eldoret, some 200 miles west of the capital, Nairobi. who is aspiring to be one of the women in the Judicial Service Commission of Kenya, and we're wishing her nothing but the very best in our endeavor to make sure that the judicial system in Kenya improves. And I think that sentiment is shared by all diasporans around the world who have nothing but complete appreciation and love for our country back in Kenya. And those viewers, again, in Kenya, politicians especially watching, please try to make sure that the country is better than it is, because that's the essence of us being human beings. Next week again we'll be in Nairobi, and in Nairobi we'll be moving not from politics, the judicial system, but we're going to talk sports. And then we'll be having Elias Makori, who is a sports editor at the Nations Group. And I think it's interesting for most people who want to talk sports. We'll be talking about the state of sports in Kenya, whether that's in athletics, whether that is soccer. We'll also dissect the sports world in Africa. And maybe we'll get Job Obanyi talk about the English Premier League or La Liga, Bundesliga, and why that is so important among us Kenyans and not the Kenyan sport itself. So that'll be an interesting discussion. Following that discussion, on next week, Sunday at 10 to 11, we'll be having the mayor of Anoka City here in St. Paul, Minneapolis, who is going to talk directly to the immigrant community, who is the mayor, by the way, is aspiring to be the commissioner for that part of the county. We're going to have interesting questions. And so for those who live in Anoka or around the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, please feel free to send us your questions so that we can engage the incoming commissioner with those candid questions next week. Don't forget again, before you hang out, please go to facebook.com on our face, KDRTV, and subscribe. All you need to do is to click that button, and that's it. You don't have to pay for anything. As well, go to Twitter, follow us there. You'll get updates all the time. Don't forget also to go to Facebook, make your comments, give us feedback. We're more interested on those positive comments and how best we can improve the network in our endeavor to drive a very positive diaspora narrative.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. And on a somber note, we also want to send a message to the diasporans here, especially in the Twin Cities, and Kenyans here in Minnesota. I've lost one of the icons. Dr. Makori passed on a week ago, and today there is a ceremony at the Kenyan Community's Church in Brooklyn Park in commemoration of him. So we're calling upon all the Kenyans here in the Twin Cities to head there and send him farewell. And of course, on behalf of KDRTV, we are sending our condolences to the family during this very difficult time. Again, join us again next week when we focus on other issues affecting the diaspora here in the United States. It's Dr. Jeremiah Okari for KDRTV.
So have you conducted a survey, and people shown interest to join the credit union?
So it makes a lot of sense for us to have our own credit union where we make our own decision regarding loans, regarding deposits, regarding buying houses, and all this, regarding our student unions. There is a lot of wisdom in having, and I think, as many people have said, right, it is quite overdue. Right. Now, have we done research? That's the second question I think that has been asked.
Sure.
People we have talked to, that's what our chairman said here, it is much overdue. So we decided to volunteer the services of letting our people have their own bank, which they call their own. I must also mention that formation of a credit union brings us together as a people. We consolidate our financial power. Right. Besides making decisions whom to give money, which we don't make in the banks we operate in, right, we do have a community that can address the aging society. Right. For example, right, if we need money to put up, like, let's say, senior living or health system of our own, it will be easier. We can do it through when we have a credit union. Right. So right now, it's just unfortunate that we have not come together. We, right, bank in a diversified banking. We don't have any power, right, but this is the opportunity we can grasp this idea.
Right. Thank you.
Let me mention this finally. Our children, our young people who start life now are better served by a credit union in this country. Right. Many people have never taken a loan from a bank because of stringent conditions. Mm-hmm. But our people, young people, can be built in this country by our own credit union. Right. A community center can be put up very easily. Senior living can be put very easily. Money that is for the communities in this country, which is given and provided by the government, can be channeled very easily. Emergency loans for investing anywhere in the world can be obtained very easily. So I think our projections are right, and it will be helpful, and people will go back and look back after a few years and see what has been done. They will not regret. Just want to add that at that point, when people come together before they start operating, they will choose their board at that point. And they will go through among their community and choose people who have integrity. They forward this list to the government.
Of course.
And the government will vet and do a background check and approve or disapprove. So it is a very thorough integrity check from your people, the people choose, and also the same people are vetted by the government before they take office.
So you are going to involve the government in this procedure? The government is thoroughly involved from the beginning to the end.
In fact, what we're doing right now, Mr. Kibwato.
Thank you. How safe is members' funds?
I think that is a concern for everybody, and I'm happy that you raised that up.
Yes.
And our people have had several experiences which makes them nervous when they do that. But the safety of this money is based on two things. It's based on the process that this thing goes through for it to start. It also involves the government rigor verification and every year reports. Let me mention these three things. One, I were just said earlier that people, before they start, the government will come over, verify their names and the addresses, and choose the leadership at that point. The list is taken to the government. It is vetted and approved. Then they start working. Every year, the government will require reports from all credit unions in the country to be filed by the agency. The agency sends the auditors to come and audit every year. That's 3 points. The final one, the amount that people give as deposits, as insurance, as share capital, is secured by Federal Credit Union Insurance Fund, up to 250. So even if 250,000. So even if the money is somehow mishandled, the government pays back to the members immediately, up to $250,000 each member. So it's foolproof, it's insured, and it's safe.
The financial plans, business plans, mentoring by others. Can you please give us what's your projections?
Thank you. That is a very good question, and I think we need to go clearly, slowly, so that all of us can understand this. A financial plan and projections is a document that will be presented at the annual general meeting in the presence of the government representative, and it is a document that will be launched with the government, to the Federal Credit Union Office, for the purposes of approval and chartering. The question is, how much do we anticipate to come in? How much do we anticipate to be paid out? And how much do we anticipate to be expensed? We have rather mentioned the minimum value of a share is $50. Our projections is that if each member will give a share capital of $100 a month, and we anticipate to have around 5,000 members in this credit union, it means that every month $100 times 5,000, which is 500,000, will come in. It's anticipated that this money will come in. So that means in a year they will come around $6 million. That is the initial 1 year. If we go the following year, that will increase in 5 years. It will increase much further. If that goes the way we are talking, the inflow of cash in terms of share capital will be one of the largest credit union in Minnesota. But it's a federal credit union, so it will cover the entire country. Now, that is the income. How is other income coming in? So if I'm a member and I have an account with the credit union, probably my salary will come in a month. If it's $1,000 coming each person in a month through the credit union, those are several $million that comes in.
Exactly.
Now, that is the income part alone we are projecting. But we do project that out of that income, the advances committee, that the committee that is in charge of giving loans, will give that 500,000 to loans less the required capital of 10%.
Right.
So the maximum loans that can be given every month is $450,000. That leaves alone 10% as a deposit, which remains in the bank as a share capital.
Right.
So in a year, if we give 6 million that comes in plus other money, maybe 10 million, then which means that decisions for loans will be 10 million less 10%.
Right.
That is around $9 million
Right.
that goes out. Here's the benefit. Where does this money go? Whom is it given? The money is given to members for their needs,
Right.
which are determined by your committee. You decide how much you give. Sometimes you decide your own interest. So if you decide to give loans for people, to give equity loans, to give school fees loans, to give emergency loans, you decide by yourself. That is the beauty of it.
Right.
Another question I want to ask Mr. Okari is about the charter process. Tell us a little bit more about the charter process.
That's a very good question. The first step is to ensure that we have a community that has similar goals. That we have Minnesota and we have everywhere. And that's why we have asked people to go to the credit union website and register themselves. This list will be put together and be sent to the government. The government will look at it. I said, yes, we have people here who are asking for credit union, and they come over and have a general meeting with the people. At that general meeting, they will prove that they are viable. They prove that they are serious by providing their information. And they take these documents to their office, which they process a few months. If they find out that based on this list, based on the projections we have just discussed about, and we are able to sustain ourselves, they give us what we call a charter. A charter is a registration of a federal credit union by the government under the Federal Credit Union Agency, managed by the credit union, and they give us an okay to start. That process takes from 3 months to 6 months. And these 11 board members are just interim.
Yes.
And the moment we call the government to come and sit with the body of members, total them,
Right.
they will appoint their own new officers.
Yes, yes.
Who are vetted by the government, and if approved the government, those are the board that will govern the credit union. Exactly. We're just an interim basis, and we are helping to kick it off. I think for now we have done some groundwork. A few people have registered. Soon you will hear an update of that from our president. And we hope that will go pretty quickly. Within 24th of October, that process will finish. Then we start compiling the documentation, send it to the government. It takes up between 3 and 6 months to have a chartering finished.
Right.
A share capital is an amount that qualifies a person to be a member. And the weight of a person is determined by the amount you give as a share capital. This money stays in the company until you sell your own shares. The concept must be understood.
Right.
How much do we need for this, our credit union? The law specifies that the amount of capital should be 10% of the net assets. I need to explain so that people understand what it is. Net assets is the amount of loans that the credit union gives out. For example, if the credit union gives out 500,000 loans at any given time, right, then the level of share capital should be 10% of that, which is actually 50,000.
Right.
Many credit unions give about, let's say, $4 or $5 million as loans.
Right.
So the amount of capital required for that size of a credit union that has loans of $5 million is 10%, which is 50%, 500,000. So how many people then do we need to give that? It is the amount each person gives divided by the number of people. For example, if there are $500,000 are required at the share capital, and we have 3,000 members, or let's say 5,000 members, then the average share capital is $100.
Right.
That's how it works.
That's
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
It is possible we could go either the state to form a state credit union, but we decided to go federal because our people are spread everywhere.
Right.
And the more the numbers, the better it is to run a bank.
Right.
Thank you.
I need Mr. Makori to have a closing shot. Mr. Makori, go ahead, please.
I think this is a beauty, ladies and gentlemen, to be sure that the money before it leaves our community to the entire economy, we maximize its benefit. So you can only maximize the benefit of your money to use it maximum before it goes as the only way you can do it is to have your own bank. I think, in my own view, the development we can make by moving in having an institution that is ours, that runs for us, will promote not only here, but wherever our people are outside. So I would urge that we take the fastest opportunity to join in and move forward at this time.